Chapter 7 The Snow Queen's Palace. And what of Kai? Was he imprisoned in the Snow Queen's palace, dreaming of the moment when Gerda would come and release him? Not a bit of it, for he had a block of ice where his heart should be and a sliver of the sorcerer's glass in his eye. As the reindeer dropped Gerda by the berry bush, Kai was with the Snow Queen. She sat on her throne in the place in the center of a lake. The lake had no water, but was a sheet of ice dividing into 1,000 matching pieces. The lake was called Reason's Mirror, for it saw and reflected only the surface of everything, and not the heart. "I must leave you for a while," said the Snow Queen in a whisper that could be heard across a crowded room. "Spitting mountains are sorely in need of snow. Lemons and vines are no fit company for a fire mountain." Kai looked at her vacantly. His mind could not reach beyond the palace walls. "How is your puzzle?" asked the Snow Queen. "Have you finished yet?" Kai's eyes went immediately to a pattern on the floor in the palace hall. Pieces of ice lay in a seemingly random pattern. The pieces were letters. The Snow Queen's eyes followed Kai's. "Oh dear," she said, "and to think of what I promised you, if you could form the letters into one simple word." And with that, she swept imperiously out of the hall, onto her sled, and out of the palace. Kai could hardly be bothered to move. He turned his chair around and stared at the broken pieces. He stared and thought, but he couldn't make out a single word. He was so still and cold, he looked like one of the ice statues that decorated the palace. Kai was still sitting looking at the pattern on the floor when the outer door of the palace blew open and Gerda strode through. The winds that guarded the door howled and shrieked around her, but her mist friends followed her in, and the winds faded away. Gerda walked through the vast halls one by one, each an icier blue and more vast than the last. Finally, she came to the central hall and saw Kai. "Kai!" cried Gerda and ran across the lake. The ice was slippery, and Gerda moved too fast. Her feet slid from under her, and she reached her arms out to stop her fall. She saw her reflection in the ice. She saw a little girl with golden hair. She saw the determination in her own eyes, and she knew she could beat the Snow Queen and take Kai back home. She pulled herself to her feet and walked boldly across the lake of ice where Kai sat. He turned to look at her, but there was no recognition in his eyes. Gerda seized Kai's shoulders and pulled him close. "At last," she sobbed. "After so long, at last I found you, and you're alive." Gerda wept for joy. Hot salt tears rolled down her cheek and splashed onto the floor, making the ice hiss and steam. As she held Kai's face, she looked into his eyes. Her tears still fell. He licked his lips, and a teardrop touched his tongue. Another teardrop fell in his eye and washed away the sliver of the sorcerer's mirror. The teardrop on his tongue ran through his veins, and the lump of ice that had gripped his heart melted away in an instant. Even as Gerda held him, tears welled up in Kai's eyes as he recognized the friend that he had forgotten. "Gerda?" he asked, scarcely able to believe that she was there holding him. "Yes, dear Kai, it's me," said Gerda, still crying with as much joy and relief as with sorrow. She kissed Kai's nose and his fingers, and as she did so, the color and warmth flooded back into his face. Kai looked around him as if seeing his surroundings for the first time. "What am I doing here, Gerda?" he asked, shivering as he spoke. "It's so cold and empty." "You are in the Snow Queen's palace, Kai," said Gerda, hugging him again for reassurance. "But don't be afraid, I've come to take you home." "Home?" Kai's eyes misted over the thought. He smiled for the first time, and Gerda smiled back. "Yes, home," he agreed more definitely, "and we shall have a party and games." "Oh, Kai, we will," said Gerda, seizing Kai by the hands and pulling him to his feet. Laughing for pure joy, she danced Kai round and round on the ice, and as they danced, laughing and singing, the letters of the ice in Kai's puzzle began to stir. At first they just wriggled a little, but as Kai and Gerda danced faster and faster, the letters caught up in the mood, and soon they were skipping around the children in a crazy dance of their own. Kai and Gerda sank to the floor, exhausted, and the letters sank back down too. And as they formed a word on the floor of the ice. Eternity. Kai saw the word and knew what it meant. "I am free, Gerda," he said simply. "Even the Snow Queen cannot hold me any more." Gerda grasped Kai's hand. He was quite warm now, and together they walked out of the Snow Queen's palace. Stay tuned for part 2.